When it comes to China, I think that the one kind of like exogenous variable, the economists, they say assume ... and those assumptions are often heroic assumptions, we will call them. And there are all the jokes about how do you change a light bulb, and the psychotherapist patients can change the light bulb, but the light bulb's got to want to change is one of the jokes. And the economist answer is assume a light bulb or assume a tool. And so the big heroic assumption that is just a black box for me that I think will turn out correct, but we will never know, is everything assuming, provided that the Communist Party of China behaves rationally. And the rational interest of the Communist Party of China is to stay in power. The way they've stayed in power and the way they succeed in staying in power is by delivering for the people of China. It's in a very different way to a liberal democracy, but they have delivered, and it's a fact that's been stated many times. Never in the history of the planet have so many people been lifted out of poverty, and the fact of the matter is that is to the credit of the Communist Party of China. For one reason or another, for reasons that I don't fully understand, they're getting things right. They have gotten things right historically, the record shows. Millions of people travel out of China and voluntarily come back to China, so it's not so unfree that people don't want to be in China. They have delivered on prosperity for the Chinese people, and that was hard for me to understand, because my educational background was that the world tends towards liberal democracy, and at the end of the day, liberal democracy is the right way to do things, and liberal democracy works for Europeans and North Americans, but it also works for the Koreans, it also works for the Japanese. So this is a model that is transplantable across cultures. But now we have a different model that on key measures has delivered for the population. And it seems that it has the capacity to self-correct. So what is scary about authoritarian governments and regimes is that perhaps they cannot self-correct. And so as long as they're aiming towards a goal that everybody agrees and understands, they get there very fast and very effectively. But what happens when you need to make new decisions and take a new direction? Example would be that the China under the end of the Ming, I believe it is, dynasty, went into a period of decline where the system could not rejuvenate itself. And a key strength of democracies is that they seem to be able to, very inefficient in their decision making, but we seem to be able to rejuvenate ourselves, to reboot after we've made some bad decisions. I'm still waiting for the United Kingdom to reboot after having taken a terrible decision on Brexit. But an interesting point on China is that having realized that they'd made an enormous mistake in their very, very severe lockdowns over COVID, that did self-correct. And there was an argument that I heard recently that Xi Jinping wanted his third term. He didn't want to do anything that would get in the way of his third term. But now he's understood rationally that the getting people prosperity is actually very important for his third term, and he can now stand back and allow that to happen. So he's relaxed the COVID restrictions, the huge scrutiny of some of these large tech firms has been relaxed as well. And so I think that there is at least an indication that the Chinese Communist Party will continue to make rational decisions. Very long answer to a very good question. I hope that I didn't lose anybody along the way. So.
It was a really long answer, but it was going into detail. And I think there's also a nugget in it. The quote on Buffett is very interesting.
It is very interesting and really, really important. And if you allow me to dive in on that,
sure.
It may be the most interesting thing, worthwhile takeaway from this is don't live your life assuming that you're not capable of great evil. You are, we all are. And that we should live our lives understanding that part of us that is capable of great evil, and then harness that for good and protect ourselves against that. And I have that conversation internally. I say, I've said, if you think that we're just not capable of doing what Bernie Madoff did or what SBF may or may not have done, we don't know. Think again. The reason, I strongly believe that I'm not capable of it, but I don't want to live my life that way. I want to live my life as if it might be possible and take all the measures necessary, which are kind of like, and it starts at the very, very most basic thing. It didn't actually save Bill Gates, but I used to say about Bill Gates, if you name your foundation the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in a certain way, what you're saying to some aggressive female who might want to win your love is, you're never going to get the foundation. The foundation is with me and Melinda. So you can place things into your life which make it impossible. If I say to Chantal, whom you met, hey, if ever I, get onto, if ever I start trying to cheat on my wife, I'd like you, and I say in front of everyone, to please put a call into my wife right away. In a certain way, I'm making it okay to do that. As something that I do here is that I tell people, if any regulatory agency from Switzerland, the United States, developed country calls up, you do not have to speak to a lawyer, you do not have to speak to me, just answer the questions honestly. That's kind of saying we want to run this place where at any minute, and because I do think that we need to put all the protections we can against bad behavior, and one of the best protections is to not assume that we're not capable of that, as Warren Buffett doesn't assume that he's not capable of it. So, making the point again, but yeah.
It can also be a certain level of, if you're conscious about it, know that you have the potential to be like this. It can't be also a resource that you can manage it.
Yes.
Maybe at some point of time you have to be in some situation where others are cruel, so you could use this as a resource.
Yes, and so the person that I have not paid close enough attention to who talks about this is Jordan Peterson. And he talks about recognizing the evil inside you, or recognizing the capacity to do harm, and to harness that. And so he's somebody who understands it a lot better than I do. I think that what's really hard is that there's this just explosion of content on YouTube, and a lot of it is really, really good. But there's a limit to how much we can listen to. So, I'm not sure where to go. Jordan Peterson's books are great, but he's got a lot more content on the internet that's in his books. So I would actually say that Jordan Peterson is a really, really special human who I think that I don't want to give him the status of biblical prophet, but he's a kind of a seer in that way. In each generation, we have people who are connected to something that's very, very profound about our humanity. And I think that he's, for one reason or another, connected to that. And we all do well to pay attention to him. I don't think we have to try. I think that because of the nature of his message, he will find his way into our minds one way or another. And I think that what really impresses me about Jordan Peterson, but it's also true of other people. I think that Prince Harry, although I've not read his book, I've watched a couple of interviews, but also somebody that I got to know who's just she's a British journalist and she writes reviews for the Sunday Times, Christina Patterson. There's a sort of a class of humans. Monish is this as well. They have a fearless dedication to the truth, a fearless dedication to finding out what is actually true, and then speaking that truth without a fear of what will happen to them, to the relationship or anything else. And those people are to be treasured by our civilization, because many of us, and I hate to put myself into the category, but I know that it's been true of me in the past, maybe it'll be less so in the future, is that we do what is expedient. So it starts with flattery or telling white lies or presenting something that is not entirely the case, but is just easier. And that is a divergence from the truth. And but it is this searingly honest, to the pentillo, to the very last bit of truth that I think that pulls individuals into incredible adventures and pulls civilization into a far better place. And Jordan Peterson is doing that. I think Monish Pabrai does that. Sam Harris has a very short monograph, I think he calls it On Lying, where he basically came to the conclusion that even telling white lies is not an ideal thing to do. Ideally, you don't do it. But it's very easy to fall into it because it's expedient. Last point on Jordan Peterson. I don't know where we started here, but it's like a motto to have on one's computer or to have up there. Do what is meaningful, not as what is expedient, is a beautiful guide for life. And when one's faced with a difficult choice, we can ask ourselves the question, what is meaningful to do in this situation? What is expedient? Am I moving towards what is expedient, or am I moving to what is meaningful?
The internet is full of good videos. You already mentioned this. There's also an interesting video on Jordan Peterson that also portrays his dark side. I will send it to you and we can discuss it, but not in this interview because I want to close
I look forward to that, and I'm very curious to see that.
I want to hear your thoughts on it. It's quite long, but you can watch it with time. Maybe let's close this part of the interview with a question that's going back to the investing world. What is an unpopular now in the investing world that you think may offer attractive returns over the next 5 to 10 years?
Isn't that interesting? So how does Peter Thiel, he has a way of formulating that question that I cannot put into my head right now. But what is something that people believe today that is not true, or what is not true? So in part, I think that the lack of portfolio moves is because I don't fully see and understand what that might be. Well, obviously, it'll be easy in retrospect. I really, you've stumped me. You could ask it again, and I would have to think long and hard.
Maybe reframe it. What do you, as a value investor, love right now? So I think that maybe a way of understanding my own portfolio is to think of the Lindy effect, which has been brought up numerous times by Nassim Taleb. And I think that we've just come through a period where we had some, and when we get innovation, it seems that there are some companies that just hit they win the lottery in that they have a disruptive innovation that is also profitable. So Microsoft with the PC and the PC software interface was disruptive and enormously profitable for Microsoft. Or we go to previous generations, American Telephone and Telegraph managed to benefit from extraordinary network effects and built a monopoly, very, very profitable monopoly. We go forward to Google and Amazon, and again, they were disruptive and they were extraordinarily profitable. But for every one of those, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses that are disruptive in one way or not, but are not profitable. And we can talk about the airline industry that Warren Buffett has talked about so much with the Wright brothers, and how no money's been made in the airline industry for the longest time. Or we can talk about the automobile industry, where there were thousands of automobile manufacturers and only very, very few survived. And in this period, we have many businesses that looked like they were the next great big disruptors, but perhaps they turned out, or they clearly turned out not to be. Whether that was WeWork was one great example, and I think that people have general agreement now about that over Uber. So I think that a far happier place to look. There are some disruptions that happen so unbelievably quickly. If you think of TikTok and very, very short video formats, or you think about how you just go straight to not even using the person's social network, but just the content of the videos to give them stuff, and where the penetration happened in like 6 months. Very, very hard for an investor like me to react to an innovation that's happening that fast. But I can say that when you think about cable TV, John Malone, company TCI, and ultimately Liberty Group of companies, that was an innovation that was kind of spreading through the economy on a year-by-year basis that resulted in the people who were tuned into it, including Ted Wexler, who's been an investor in the Liberty Group of companies. You could kind of follow it, and it was happening over a multi-decade period, which is a kind of a much
easier pace of change. So I think that there are probably quite a few innovations or changes that are unfolding at a far slower pace, but a far more investable pace for us. It's still not really answered your question because I really don't know. I wish I did, but I don't.